Alrighty. This is a review I meant to make earlier in the week, but I simply did not get around to it, unfortunately. And with the release of Creed 2, I'm reviewing the original Rocky, the one that came out in 1976 and the one that most people have the most critical praise for. And I think it's kind of a fitting idea that I reviewed this movie because the only other movie I reviewed where Rocky was the main hero was Rocky 5, and that's probably one of the most reviled films, not just in the Rocky franchise, but in cinematic history. And honestly, I felt like that movie was nowhere near as bad as it makes it as Rocky 5 is nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. But we're talking about the original. And I don't really know if there's anything I can say about the original that hasn't already been said. As far as, the background trivia, what led to making this movie, where Stallone was before this movie came out. It's all been common knowledge, but honestly, when Rocky was first created, Stallone was very much like Balboa in the movie. He was an underdog in his profession. Not many people respected him, and they were struggling to get by. And in fact, Stallone said he wrote this movie after seeing the Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner fight, where Chuck Wepner, who is this no-name boxer who's a club fighter, almost beat Muhammad Ali, and he made it to the 14th round. And it just kind of inspired him to make the movie because it was for a guy like Wepner, who wasn't as well known as Muhammad Ali was. It was kind of impressive that he gave Muhammad Ali that kind of run for his money. Um, anyway, so with Rocky getting into the movie, the plot, I might have given it away already, but I'm just going to say it anyway. The plot is that Rocky Balboa is this blue collar, lower class or lower middle class citizen in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is a loan shark during the day and a semi professional boxer when as his other job. Rocky, they really establish in the first few minutes that Rocky is an underdog, and I'll get to that more in a second. So Rocky ends up getting a once in a lifetime chance to fight for the heavyweight title against Apollo Creed, and Rocky now has a chance to finally prove to people that he's not just some street bum from the neighborhood. He's not homeless, but he's pretty much on Skid Row. If you've heard, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, if you've heard of the song "Living on a Prayer," that's kind of this life situation that Rocky is in right now. Anyways, so Rocky goes on to fight Apollo in an effort to prove to people that he's not just a loser. I'm not going to give away the ending. I'm going to try really hard not to give away the ending, but the ending is actually kind of unique. I'm not going to get to the ending yet. I still need to talk about the first two-thirds of the movie. So, yeah, like I was saying, alluded to earlier, the first 10-15 minutes of the movie kind of establishes Rocky is kind of poor, is getting beat up for very little money in the semi pro boxing ring. And the first 10-15 minutes, people are just constantly taking a dump on him. I mean, he he's called a bum after winning a fight. He isn't really able to get anywhere romantically with this pet shop worker that he kind of has a thing for. His trainer gives up on him, and Rocky tries to help this preteen girl get away from the wrong crowd, and she ends up saying "screw you" in a last act of defiance. So it's kind of sad because Rocky, you do kind of see him as this tough guy with a heart of gold. He may be rough, he might be a guy that could punch your face out or punch your lights out, I should say. But at the end of the day, he's still kind of a likable person. I think the only thing Rocky does in this movie that would make him unlikable is when he shoplifts turtle food. But then again, they're kind of establishing that he doesn't really have a lot of money for himself and his pets. So yeah, and the person in the store didn't even stop him. They just kind of like, well, whatever. I'm surprised they didn't even try to press the issue he was shoplifting, but that's a small issue. Anyway, so what I really like about the movie is that most people are expecting it to be a boxing film, and it does have boxing in it, but there's really only two fights. One in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then you don't see another the climactic boxing match between Rocky and Apollo. And that doesn't happen until maybe, I don't know, 80 minutes after the first fight. So yeah, you don't see another boxing match until the last 20, 25 minutes of the movie. And I'm not really sure how accurate the boxing techniques are in the movie compared to real boxing, but they're both entertaining and both boxing matches kind of get across what they need to get across. The first one saying this is kind of a lousy venue on the back streets somewhere, and then the other one is trying to say that this is a huge grand fight that is just as taxing on Rocky as it is on Apollo Creed. And Apollo Creed, he kind of comes off as someone who's a little egotistical. He's not really a villain. He's just kind of a character who has a lot of confidence, and he's had a Hall of Fame career by this movie's logic in terms of boxing. So he kind of has that, showmanship, egotistical, but he's kind of this charming, egocentric kind of guy. He kind of has some charisma, but not as much as some characters would in the later movies. Um, a lot of the drama from Rocky, it doesn't really stem from people just being mean from Rocky. It's Rocky trying to. It's just the connections he forms with everybody, and I think the only character in this movie that I found to be very unlikable was Rocky's best friend Paulie. Now Paulie is Rocky's friend, and he's also the older brother of Adrian, the pet shop girl that Rocky's trying to go out with. And Sylvester Stallone said that Rocky's friend Paulie's supposed to be like a negative version of what Rocky could be. Not not financially well off, struggling to get by. Only unlike Rocky, who's trying to help people and is actually a very nice guy, Paulie is this bitter, angry, overweight jerk. I'm not trying to diss overweight people at all. I'm just saying that, Rocky seems to have a slightly better outlook on life than Paulie, who's just angry and bitter at everyone and isn't really doing anything to change his situation. So it's kind of Paulie's kind of a pathetic asshole in this movie. He's always asking for a job. He always blames other people for his problems, and he never takes initiative to turn his life around except near the very end. And um, I saw the Sam Gonzalez and oh man, I can't remember who the other guy was, but if you watch Double Toasted, they talk about how Adrian's shyness is kind of born out of the fact that she had an abusive family, and I don't know about her mom and dad, but Paulie was certainly abusive. I mean, there's a scene where Paulie kind of forces Adrian to go out to date Rocky, and I get the point behind that Adrian is kind of a shut in, and Rocky and Paulie are trying to get her to come out of her shell. But if you're trying to help someone get over their shyness, you don't take a Thanksgiving turkey they cooked, tell them to eat it while throwing it out into the lawn, and then cornering her in the room. And I don't know. There are some things in this movie that people might have issue with nowadays, seeing it for the first time, because I mean, what was socially acceptable back in 1976 is going to be a lot different than now. And the one scene that I'm not sure how people would read nowadays is the scene where Rocky takes Adrian back to Rocky's apartment, and he is trying to get her to you know be romantic, and then he blocks the door while she's trying to get out, and says, "No, I want to kiss you. You don't have to kiss me back if you don't want to." And again, there are a couple scenes where Adrian looks out longingly at Rocky, trying to, kind of hinting she has something for him. But yeah, Rocky, he does. Again, I know what the filmmaker's intention is, but it could kind of be misconstrued as sexual harassment in some cases. I mean, I wouldn't I would see where people are coming from. I wouldn't agree completely, and I wouldn't disagree completely with people having a problem with this scene. But I don't know. Even when I first saw it, which was like 11 years ago, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this scene. And even then, even though I understand what was going on with it, more so now, a part of me is just kind of thinking, yeah, someone's gonna watch this movie nowadays and think that's harassment. I'm afraid. Um, and I think the one other major character of note is Mickey, Rocky's mentor and his trainer. And Mickey's kind of the typical, tough trainer who he's kind of rough on you. He's not afraid to get up in your face and cuss you out, but at the end of the day, he still cares about Rocky. And part of Mickey's frustrations in the movie is that he always kind of saw Rocky as someone who was a better fighter with better potential, and Rocky just threw that out the window as far as he's concerned. So when Mickey agrees or Mickey attempts to train Rocky for the heavyweight fight, Rocky is still a little, distrusting of Mick because if it weren't for Mick, Rocky would still be in the boxing gym and he wouldn't have got kicked out. So there is this really good scene where, Mickey tries to get Rocky to accept his offer, but Rocky may be dumb and unsophisticated in some sense, but he's not an idiot. When he sees Mickey coming in and praising him, he's like, "Yeah, but you took away my locker, man." You know, and then it gets to a scene where Rocky gets really angry at Mickey and he starts ranting and raving about how Mickey all of a sudden wants to help him when he never did before, and then it results in the two making up and getting ready to train. And another noteworthy thing is the training montage. The training montage, this is one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, and if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but what really makes the scene work is that even though you know that Rocky is not supposed to win, the music is rousing, it's entertaining, it gives you a sense that this guy can do it. Excuse me. It gives you that sense that, even though Rocky is not really experienced compared to Creed, it's like this sucker has a shot. There's still that hope. And it was a great idea to not have the boxing take over the movie because it flushes out the characters. It gives you a sense of the world, and it also helps you get attached. You know, so when Rocky gets his nose broken or gets beaten to the point where you have to cut the swelling off his eye so he can see, it's harder to watch because you love this guy and you really want him to try and pull through. And I think the last thing I'll say with the ending, without giving too much away, all I'm going to say is that the ending is a very mature, heartfelt way to end the story. It doesn't end in the cliche that most sports movies would end in, but it still ends in a way where you feel happy. It leaves you coming out of the theater with a very happy, upbeat feeling. And yeah, it spawned a load of sequels over the next 40 years since that first movie came out. And honestly, while some of the sequels are questionable in terms of quality, I will still say that this was probably the greatest introduction. Oh, okay. One of the greatest introductions to an iconic character because I think there's some other movie franchises that are probably more well known and popular than the Rocky movies, but at any rate, the movie is an all-time classic. It has a lot of heart, and you can tell that it has a lot of soul, and that it's really trying to tell the story about how any down on his luck every man can be a hero. And with Creed 2 coming out, I don't know if I'm going to see that, but hopefully I can watch that at some point in the future. And honestly, I could go on for hours about Rocky, but I think I've taken up about 15 minutes of your guys' time in this video. So see you guys next week with my Elvis cover. Bye.